T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Launch Sequence Podcast. We've got another week of good Star Citizen conversation for you, and I've brought in a returning guest, a nice face, as you can see, but also a great YouTuber and Star Citizen, Dedleader, to talk about some starter ships and getting into the game with these starter ships. How you doing, man?
Hello. I'm all right. It's a good Sunday afternoon, it feels like a Sunday morning. I haven't been up for very long, so whatever. I'm good.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me on this Sunday. We don't usually shoot on Sundays, but here we are, supporters in chat. You guys here as well, although I think it's like Saturday night for some of you. So thanks for coming. I am excited to have this talk because I haven't gotten to have a good summary of starter ships in a while, and things have changed since then. And I know you've got a pretty good grasp of ships. But before we get into things, I kind of want to start about some of your recent content, because you had a funny video about the Carrack, right? And the medical changes that were hitting the Carrack. I gotta ask, are you truly disappointed? Are you actually leaving the Carrack behind, or do you think it's going to still have some significance for you?
I mean, okay. Well, my thinking about it was, you and I talk a lot about like haters and stuff a lot, and the thing is, what I did was essentially it was a eulogy to the Carrack. I did like the Carrack is dead video, and so my thinking was, all right, finally, with the medical gameplay kind of being redundant now because anyone can get access to it, that was the last kind of thing that made the Carrack, like, for me, like, give me a reason to take it out. And so I hadn't taken it out at all this patch. And every now and then when I would sit and think like, oh, what should I take out? It's like the Carrack, like, no, that's too much work to get in, too slow to get out here. And, I just want to go do this faster. And so I sort of realized like, oh, it's, for me, it's dead. And normally people would do a like, oh, hate video, and they've ruined it with this and all that. But I love the Carrack, and I didn't want to do a hate video. And so for me, it was just more like a feeling of, sadness that I didn't have a reason to take it out more. So my angle was like, all right, well, I guess I'm eulogizing it was the thing. And so I took out, like, I wrote all like the different points that I had on why the things I miss and the things that never happened with it, and the things that are, gone, and the little ventures I took, and I kind of wrote them out and put them in dot point form. And then I put them in ChatGPT and told it to put it in the form of a eulogy. And I gave it all the right background and information. And it did this really spot on, like, it wrote this really spot on eulogy for me. I was like,
oh God, that's such a good idea, man.
I tweaked it here and there. And I was like, yeah, this is it. This is a script. And I just like walked around the ship and then just recorded it, and it was done. And then surprisingly it did really well.
Yeah, people liked it. I thought it was good, man. I mean, the point of it is sound, and that's what gets people, is like, it resonates because there's confusion. Like, yeah, medical gameplay is changing. This doesn't mean the game is ruined. This doesn't mean everything is going to fall apart, but we don't really know what it means. So a lot of people are in this state of like, okay, well, how useful is that ship I got for medical stuff going to be? We all know it's going to be useful, but like, what's the catch, kind of?
Yeah, and it's just, and that's just it as well, because there's so many people that are like doom and gloom and naysayers about stuff like, oh, it's ruined forever. It's not ruined forever. It's just, it's dead for me for now in this patch. If I'm ever critical of something, you should always trust content creators. We know it's only just for now in the patch. You always get comments of saying it's in alpha, they're going to change, they're going to fix it. It's like, I know, I'm reporting on now. You don't have to tell me that.
I didn't know this game was alpha. What do you mean?
No, I mean, I don't know what alpha means.
The late beta stage.
Yeah.
and it's they're published by Ubisoft. I don't like, yeah, but I get what you mean. A lot of times you'll be told things that you're like, wait, I just made a video about that. I know, I understand.
Yeah, but context. A lot of people like did give me love though, and they were Carrack owners as well. They were like, I'm still owning it, like, oh, but this is so true. And so that made me feel good, because I didn't want people to think I was shitting on it because I do love the Carrack. Like it's given me lots of fun.
You made it obvious in the fact that you were talking about the drone room and the components room and stuff, and you were making jokes about how we don't know those rooms. And it's like, well, yeah, everybody understands. We're going to know them at some point. But the Carrack is this amazing ship. I still think it's the best package of a ship in the game, but it doesn't have all the stuff to make it the best yet.
Yeah, and they're not going to touch it until like long after the Polaris is out because it just makes the most sense for them not to touch it until then because they know that then the Polaris is going to have a better hangar, better cargo, better this, and so it's going to be a better like option for people to upgrade to. So 100% they're not going to touch it till after then, which is I guess it's smart.
Yeah, I could you don't want to. A lot of people want the Carrack to change for cargo stuff right now because you can't really do much with their modular cargo bays. But if they went back in and changed the Carrack up and they added the modularity, that might mean they have to rework some of the dimensions and stuff. And then they do that this year. Well, then what happens when something like the drone gameplay comes online or the Maelstrom gets added or something else that requires another rework? I'm sure they don't want to go through the Carrack like 3 times within 3 years to keep it updated. Which is a problem that has spawned itself because of Star Citizen.
You know what they really do need to do though, CIG? They need to have like, and this is a big claim, they need to do like a bi-yearly ship stats pass. When they say when someone's complaining about why is this doing this, why is this do this, like look, well, June is coming. In June, that's our first of the and they'll have like the Excel spreadsheet of ideas and of things being changed, like should be add to the entire year. And then when it comes to like that time, then just go through every ship and just like tune speeds and health and stuff like bit by bit, because like they do with say like League of Legends or Overwatch or something, where they do like nerfs, overall nerfs and buffing of stuff. Like there needs to be like a time people can sort of count on that they're going to go through and look at stuff, because I feel it's so intermediate and it feels like it's being done by different people each time, like that who knows what's going to happen at any given time. Like I did a video yesterday about the fact that no one was told that the HP of components, like mostly like stock components, is down by either like they have either like 1/3 to 1/10 of the HP of every other component in their field. So if you're flying around with any of these components in your ship, if they get hit by even just a stray bullet, your ship's toast. Like, and no one like knows this at the moment, and like that's why. And the missile thing that happened, like all the missiles were reduced in size, and that's because they were doing a test, but they didn't tell anyone that why the point of the test, or that it was going to be temporary. And so it's just people are like left adrift of that sort of stuff. I think there just needs to be they need to be more vocal about it.
That's their problem. Almost every single time they do anything, like every time Star Citizen something happens, it almost always comes back to communication. I put out a video, I know you did too, about the medical stuff. My video was like, yours was a good summary, I think, of the reasons that people were feeling the way they felt about the medical changes. That was awesome. My video was a explanation of why it was a confusing change, right?
Yeah.
They've set up the idea of Death of a Spaceman. Now they've released this trailer. This is bad communication. And I said it in the video. I was like, this is a communication problem. And in the comments, people were going off about how I shouldn't be tied to this idea of Death of a Spaceman and all this stuff. And I'm like, it's communication. I'm not saying like they can change the game if they need to. But at the end of the day, every time something like this happens, whether it's the missiles that you're talking about, whether it's the Mark II Hornet, whether it's the F-8 Lightning coming out, whether it's land claims or the change to the roadmap or any, like, it's always the fact that they either communicate with the wrong stuff or too late, and they can't seem to get away from it.
One thing I'll talk openly about an idea for a video that I've been pushing around because I don't know how to do it correctly without offending absolutely everyone. But essentially, like, I think people hold too closely what is referred to in game design as like blue sky development, which is when, let's say, you first sit down. Say you and me want to come up with a video game, right? And all we know is that we want to come up with a video game and it's going to be sick. And so we sit down, we have a meeting, say, all right, what's a cool theme for it? Like, all right, it's going to be a billiards, pool. It's going to be a pool video game. Like, all right, awesome. I love that. All right, how about we make it so that during it, you can go to the bar and you can get a beer and you can chuck it down and that makes this happen. And then, I'm like, oh, that sounds sick. All right. And then you go, all right, how about we make a special move where you can tear the fabric off the top of the pool table. Oh, I love that. And what's happening there is you in that moment of development, you're saying what like the best ideas you each have like for it. And it's like, oh, about this and it's this. And that's what you're supposed to do at the start of development. But then as development happens, a lot of that stuff you have to say, you know what?
Cut it.
Ripping this is going to be a whole different engine. And if we wanted to get this done in time, we can't have like that to get the fabric animation right. So we're going to have to go with like this instead. And normally, like, that's how it works. Every single game is developed that way. But because Star Citizen was born from a crowdfunding where they said all this blue sky stuff initially, people go through every single patch note that comes out like to this very day. And if it doesn't exactly reflect what was on the blue sky document, scam. Rage,
they're breaking
hate,
promises.
Drama. They're
promises?
lying to us. They're lying to us again. And it's like, Jesus, man. Like they might even still like be aiming for that blue sky thing, but in the meantime, they might need to, use a different graphical render and not put this in right now. Like, and it's difficult.
I'm partial to that because I do like. I think I'm relatively known for going back in time and finding the little things that they've said about things, and I think those are good ways to follow the consistency or the inconsistency of what they've been doing. But I don't think that it is. They are like the reason that you should hinge your opinion of the whole project on. Like
especially when they keep restating it.
Yeah, well, there are some things.
Death of a Spaceman, they restate that constantly. They say, no, we're definitely still doing Death of a Spaceman.
Yeah.
But my problem is when they say we're still doing Death of a Spaceman, it's there in everyone's mind. They're still saying, yes, everything in that blue sky pitch is 100% canon still. No, it's 100% canon still. And I think that is detrimental. I think the Death of the Spaceman really, as someone who's working game development, I reckon all this they've really promised in my mind, all that I have hopes on is that we want to make sure that death is meaningful and that there is a punishment to it. I don't want them to do necessarily anything specifically that they said in Death of a Spaceman. Like, as long as they're going towards that goal of making sure that you value your life in it, and in whatever way that they do it well,
Yeah.
And then I think that notion is totally 100%. Yeah, it totally should have that. It should be valuable. But yeah, I think people over criticalize things.
No, I think you're spot on there, and that's part of what my medical video was about. Was that they came out and explained after this trailer came out. Yes, this stuff, like, we're still doing the idea of Death of a Spaceman, but you could tell by the way they were talking that the idea is shifting. There's probably going to be more deaths in your, your overall bag of deaths that you're allowed to. But it seems they're going to focus on making sure that instead of limiting deaths to be less, they make the consequences of dying more. And I like, that's something that, we can move forward with that. That's cool to hear. But the communication that comes from the trailer didn't give that idea. So, like, you end up running into a weird situation. Then people will be like, oh, it's their trailers. They don't tell you what's in the game. But, like, there are things that you do to communicate in a trailer. There's a difference between a ship flying through a group of ships and doing 2 EMPs and being like, you can't do that in game, versus somebody in a trailer saying, I've died hundreds of times, but I just jump right back into battle. It's like, that's
Well,
But-
to be honest though, that doesn't go against Death of a Spaceman. Death of a Spaceman didn't say you won't be able to respawn.
It didn't,
It
but it
just
said
says
that
that
you would
there's a
have
limit somewhere.
problems respawning, right? Like they were like,
Yeah.
yes, you're going to have DNA integrity, you're going to have cybernetics, you're going to have damage from your past life. And this dude's like, yeah, but I've respawned hundreds of times in this one battle, and there's nothing wrong with me. And that's like,
Okay, but wait. Think about what you just said. Imagine if they did the opposite then. Imagine if they said, I've respawned thousands of times. Now I need to wear this exoskeleton that I pulled out the back of my thing,
dude.
and I've got this regenerated limb from people are like, oh my god, they've got exoskeletons and cybernetic implants in the game, and they'd be like, no, the marketing's lying to us yet again.
they didn't-
There's
okay.
another space worm.
Instead of doing a video that is focusing on shooting and fighting like they do with everything else, show us a video of different people in different scenarios lifting heavy crates and getting one dropped on them, going into a mining outpost and blowing up a rock and killing themselves, somebody low flying and crashing into a cliff, and then show these people respawning with problems. You don't have to say those problems are already in the game, but like this person is tripping as they get out of the bed. This person can't do what they were doing as long because now they have reduced stamina. Like they could very easily give us a trailer that shows what Star Citizen offers, show why you would want to respawn in certain situations, and not just focus entirely on killing other people.
You know, one thing that like I suggested in that video, which I thought it sounded a bit odd, and then a lot of people said was silly, but then thinking about it, I'm like, no, this does actually make sense, was that I said that, you know, make it so that those low tier medical beds, if you die near them and are respawning them, you still have the same injuries. So say like your arm or your body is or head is still injured, but your health is still back up to that. And they're like, well, how does that work? Like, you know, a clone's a clone. I'm like, well, yeah, but in my mind, it was sort of like the higher tier ones were connected to like a network and is able to pull your on file DNA to give you like a full body respawn back. But one of these local ones is just sort of like doing a capture of you locally, like it's doing a scan on the spot of like, oh, this guy, he's down. Scan what's down there. Oh yeah, it looks like he was born with a broken arm. Looks like he's born with 5 broken ribs.
Yikes.
Bring him back here, but make his heart like pumping again. And like that made sense, sci-fi like wise of doing it. And then that is like punishing. It's extremely punishing. Like if you've got that head damage and your arms are busted and your body's busted, you're slow as all hell. Like you might just opt and go, nah, man, just send me to a fucking space station. I don't need to be healed.
And then on top of that, you're keeping those injuries. You're also maybe getting knock-on effects. Like there's tons of ways they can easily still make Death of a Spaceman make death matter without limiting deaths to a small amount or something.
100%. Yeah.
Let's talk about ships.
Yeah, the point of the thing.
We could do the whole podcast on that, but we did tell everybody we were going to talk about ships. So we'll talk about ships now, folks. Let's get into starter ships. Starter ships is a weird term for this class, and maybe by the end of this episode, we'll come up with another term for it. But for you, what is a starter ship?
Yeah, it is important to describe because there is like what CIG refer to as a starter ship, which is literally like a pool of, you know, so many ships under $100, and they're just ones you can jump into some level of game, some form or level of gameplay, you know, at that starter amount, usually packaged with the game bundle. But really, it's usually any ship that's probably around like the 150 and lower mark, you know, can be easily piloted solo. So like anything from like the Cuddy Black. Cuddy Black is kind of seen. Would you say that do they consider that a starter ship?
I
guess
think
probably
they call
an upper tier starter ship.
Yeah, it's getting into more of the multi-crew gameplay kind of, which, you know, that could be part of the definition. Do you think starter ships can be multi-crew?
Yeah, I mean, I reckon anything up to like a Constellation could. I mean, that's like the Constellation is like a real deluxe kind of starter ship, in my
Okay.
opinion. I think, but yeah, I mean, it's what you start with, really. Like, what ship can get you in and around and doing stuff. I think
Okay.
it is that. But I think if I was to talk to people in general, I probably wouldn't. I don't know. I probably morally wouldn't suggest that, just because it would imply that they have to. If it's what you're starting with, it implies that they're spending real money on it. So I'd say something that's reasonable, like reasonably like priced, if it's they're spending real world money, which I guess they kind of would technically have to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a tough one, because
Yeah.
you don't want to like tell someone, oh, for a starter ship, yeah, go spend $250.
Yeah. I honestly,
for
I tell
something
people,
because they're starting. Yeah,
like, I'm telling people, don't go over the price of a regular console
Game.
release game.
Yeah,
70, 80
yeah.
bucks at this point.
Yeah, I would never suggest anyone that if they wanted to get into the game to spend like more than, you know, like you said, like that amount, like the $50-$60 mark. But then again, like once you get into the game and you've made a little money, and then you buy your first ship and then you start using that a whole bunch. In many ways, that's, could be a starter ship. It's probably what you start. I kind of see it's the ship that you use to start your empire with in game.
Okay.
Yeah, I reckon when you really start like getting to thrive, and being to access the most amount of kind of missions. So yeah, there's like two levels of starter ship. I reckon one's like the one that you get when you actually just get the game. It's the one that you come bundled with. We could talk about what the best ones that come bundled with the game are, but then there's also, it's like, what's your second ship, and then what's that one that you're going to use to then be able to live, if Star Citizen is the everything star game where you're supposed to live the space sci-fi dream of your own choosing, then it's the ship that you pick to kind of start that adventure with. And I think that's where really people start showing their individuality of how they want to play something. Like there's so many people who might be content creators who know better of ships, but will still fly the MSR around. Like I still fly the 400i around. There's really no reason for me to be flying that thing. It doesn't have like, super good weapons, doesn't have the best like cargo and everything. It still takes a little bit to kind of get in and out of, but it with like the silver paint that I really like, I feel like it's I feel like it's my hero ship kind of in a lot of instances and stuff, where I can kind of, there's that little tinge of role play kind of going on at the same time.
My belief is that don't fly a ship for its numbers. Fly based on how it makes you feel. Like, I don't think I'll ever fly the best ship for whatever it is I'm doing. I just want to feel cool. I want to be in space flying a cool spaceship that I think looks good, and that the interior is nice. But when
What
it comes
do you
to
find yourself flying?
C1,
Like
almost
C1?
constantly now. Yeah. Before that, it was the MSR. I like the styling. I think what originally got me into the MSR was how much. First of all, it's the size, and we'll get to that as we go through the whole, what makes a good ship. But first, it was the size of the MSR, the styling on the outside, but ultimately on the interior really reminded me of, God, I can't even remember the name of the ship, but the first ship you start on in Knights of the Old Republic. I got a lot of nostalgia from that because of the way that they separated like the walkway from the wall. They used a lot of like hexagonal shapes. There were light strips down the side of the walls. They just invoked.
It has tremendous storytelling. It has great storytelling. That ship, and 100%.
I definitely like that it had space for a vehicle and cargo and stuff. But ultimately, I was not flying the MSR for what it's good for. And the C1, I think it's meant to be a good daily driver, but I'm flying that because of how it makes me feel. And I wouldn't say it's a starter ship either.
It looks good. Like it has some of that, like what I was saying, like the story feel. Like you feel like you can see yourself going on a proper space on adventure with it. It does enough of just everything that you kind of need a ship to be able to do. You can store stuff with it. You can go pick stuff up and all that. I think I find myself, people hate when I glaze on this ship because not everyone can get it. But the F8C Lightning, like I take, if I need to just get somewhere, I take the F8C Lightning because it's super easy to get in and out of. The quantum drive's really good. Like get into any like scuffle or like shenanigans, like you can definitely blast your way out of it. And yeah, I can just get to stuff. And if I need to like do anything more specific, I've got like specific ships, like, you know, tailored for like niche stuff that I can jump in for.
So when it comes back, going back to these starter ships, and the more we talk, the more I'm thinking starter is just a bad term for ships.
Yeah, it's tough.
It is, because there are clear starter ships. There are your $45 game packages, your Aurora, your Cutter. Even that's not 45, but like your Aurora, Cutter, Pisces, Mustang, like those very small and basic one-person ships. But then there's also something like a Avenger Titan and 100i, and then you go up a little bit further, and like you said, you've got the Cutlass Black, you've got the Nomad, the Hull A. All of these ships could be seen as starters by different people, and I guess the best thing is to like pick a criteria kind of that you meet to say what is a starter ship. I personally prefer something that is made dedicated for one person. Like I wouldn't consider, I don't even think, are there any dedicated sort of two-person ships that are less than $100 in this game?
Let's see, I'm opening up the store right now. All right, let's do two things. Let's go through the game package page ships and talk about these ones here, and then I reckon we can then look at like what your second ship, like the options for that sort of thing might be. Like if you were gonna in-game buy it, or maybe later on they wanted to upgrade their ship in general. So yeah, the stuff like the ships that are like the Mustangs, which are more supposed to be this kind of like entry-level combat ones, I'm just not interested. I don't think they're good ideas for people because I don't think you can really make much money with them initially. Like, and I think that's a little bit iffy.
But it does fit the criteria of a starter ship for you. Just a bad one.
It does if people are like, if you're coming to like Star Citizen because you want to get into ship combat, by all means, you know, like if that's literally like, and a lot of people are, especially a lot of content creators, like if you see them online, all they're doing is bounties, like, and like that's their thing. Like if you want to, if that's your journey, like by all means. The Auroras, man, I cannot bring myself to ever even claim an Aurora that's on my account, or like I've no interest in getting in and out of one of those things. It doesn't even move, you know, like all the bits and pieces on it, they look like they're going to unfurl or do something space fancy. They look like they're broken.
So that's, I had that planned for something to talk about later on, but the idea of gold passing these smaller ships, and I guess let me start by saying right now we're talking exclusively about game package ships. So that includes Mustang, Aurora, Pisces, Cutter, 100i, Avenger Titan, Sulen, Arrow, Nomad, and then above that you're starting to get above $100. So those are like, those are your basic game packages in Star Citizen. And when I think about where I'm going to suggest somebody starts, I'm always saying pick the $45 package. That usually is either the Mustang or the Aurora. These two ships are probably the most common ships people are going to start with. Do you think that CIG is responsible for making them good ships, or should they be ships that are encouraging people to move on?
They should take a priority with making sure that they like are keeping up to date for sure, but I don't think they necessarily need to make them better than what they are, but definitely keeping them up to date. Like I know they do things like the Cutter is like, you know, totally gold standard and that because it's new.
Yeah.
The Sulen's broken as hell.
Is it?
I mean, Yeah, it's like the elevator is like, I know a lot of people will, like, you'll get in the elevator and it'll like lock you in the top floor. Or it'll like, the elevator's like will bust and will leave you because you're like multiple levels of it. It's just
Yeah.
like the elevator can like eject you out of the ship and stuff
Yeah.
at the moment. It's a bit whiffy. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I see, and the thing is, I'm a victim to myself, and that I things that I just don't like the style of or something, I just won't touch. And so things
Mhm.
like the Avenger Titan and the 100i, not interested in. The Aurora, not interested in. I didn't like the Nomad for the longest time, and I'm still a little bit iffy about it. But it is really a good, for what it does. It's really quite a good starter at the moment, just purely because it has a phenomenal amount of cargo size for the size of the thing. Um, and it's got a little tractor beam. It can kind of get around really easily. Um, but yeah, that like the the Venture Titan and the 100i look too much like actual ships in like the real world, and so I'm like, it's not sci-fi enough. I'd prefer someone get like a Pisces over those or something.
Okay. What is
Really, I
it?
think sorry,
No, go ahead.
I was thinking really the cutter is probably the best starter. If you're not just immediately going to go after like just bounties and be like shooting people and stuff.
Mhm.
I feel like the cutter is like allows you to access probably the most amount of gameplay. At the same time, like with the bed, like for me, the bed resembles shenanigans. Like if you're gonna get up to something and you want to go out to a very specific area and you're like, oh, I've got to go, I've got to go get dinner, I've got to go get lunch or something, I need to log off. Just being able to log off in the bed and then be able to log back on and get up to whatever you were doing, continue
Mhm.
along. Like that kind of gives you the access to that. It's got not the best guns, but some to be able to like, take down something if you try hard enough. And you can always just carry things in the back. You can like, yeah, you can do it. You can put a couple of little vehicles on the back of that thing, and just really gives you probably the most access to things, I reckon. And that's probably immediately for like a new player. I would say that should be their focus, just be able to access as many sort of game loops as possible and have them. So then you've got the most sort of earning potential once you find one thing or profession that you like the most that you can advance in reputation to get more money with. I think once they do that, you can easily then go buy like a better fighter or something. Like the Arrow and like the Gladius and all that, they really aren't all that much money. I think they're probably gone up in price a bit, haven't they, in this last patch? But yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to defining a good quote unquote starter ship, or we'll say these game packages, a ship that the game comes with to get into the game, um, the ability to do general gameplay, and this is speaking for somebody who doesn't really know what they're getting into, is the best thing. An interior space, a bed, cargo space, a little bit of storage for your stuff. And I mean, even the cutter also has VTOL engines, which is getting a little bit more out of left field as to why it has benefits. But I'm pretty sure it's the only starter ship with VTOL engines.
It's yeah. I mean, other than like the Cuddy Black, but it also has that one factor that we were talking about before, like the story ability. Like it has like the MSR and all that. It's less, but it definitely when you're going through it, you feel like you're in a spaceship. You feel
Yeah.
like you're like firing that thing up. When you open that back ramp, it makes that really cool sound. When you turn the engines, it makes really good clunks, and to go into VTOL, like when you fire it up, it really has a lot of kind of story added to it, and that can help a whole bunch. If once again, if that's your style. For me, Drake, yeah, that is. I
Mhm.
like Drake ships. I like all that stuff. So, but other people might really be into the like the MSR, the Crusader sort of atmosphere for things, or jumping into a ship immediately into the cockpit might be the most important part for someone.
Yeah, yeah. So at the end of the day, it kind of comes down to personal preference. And we were talking about this earlier. You just mentioned it tells a story. It's like you're not just picking a ship because it has the best of whatever it might have. It's kind of got to fit overall what you're looking for. And a lot of people, that's just kind of general getting around and transporting stuff.
Mm.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about, actually, before we get to the other selection of ships, you would say then that the cutter you think is offering the best starting point for Star Citizen to players?
Yeah, if people like the style of it, I think it probably gives the most access to different gameplay loops, in my opinion.
Okay.
Um, for the price range in particular, because the
Yeah.
next step up from that does that similar kind of things would be the Avenger Titan. But once again, for me, I'm not a fan of how it looks and everything.
Hmm.
So, I mean, at that point, like, I'd say get a cutter and then work on making money to then get any other ships. Any other ship that's on this list, you can make the money in a cutter with that, like, in less than a day of playing.
Yeah, and it's a pretty decent jump up in price, going from like a $15 increase. That's like
Yeah,
20% something, maybe.
yeah. Exactly. Like, if it comes to purely saying like the ship that you can get that's the cheapest that you wouldn't mind always having access to for it, like, it would probably be that. Like, I mean, see, I don't even want the Aurora in my hangar. I'd pay the $16 not to see it pop up in my hangar. Unfortunately, I think up there I've got some as like loaners or something for some other ship.
Hmm.
In rep,
Yeah, yeah.
the fact that it's missing functions or something else. But yeah.
So the fact that these games are, sorry, those ships are packaged with game packages tells us that CIG sees them as a type of ship that people are supposed to be starting out with, and I guess that's what makes them starter ships. But if you go
Mhm.
by price and you just go to the ship store and you look at the cheapest options, I would say the majority of stuff that pops up that's cheaper than these ships we're talking about wouldn't fall under the category of a starter ship, right? Like you've got a bunch of ground vehicles, but you've also got like the MPUV tractor,
Mhm.
which is like you're
Mhm.
not going to tell a newcomer, "Oh yeah, this is a great starter ship." So it really does seem like
Yeah.
it's easy enough to find out which starter ships are just by looking at the game package list.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, they're all kind of utility vehicles, aren't they? Like everything else, that's sort of an option there.
There are a couple other choices in here that don't have game
There's like
packages, but ultimately,
Yeah, there's like variants of the
yeah.
ships that are on there, pretty
But
much.
then
But
then we get back to the definition. So like let's say you've been playing the game for 6 months and you've been running in a cutter and you want another starter ship. Like do you say you I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to find other ways that people might be interested in these ships besides just literally buying the game package. And that
mm,
comes back to one of my other questions, which is should these ships be something that are useful to all players of all level of gameplay, whether you've been playing for 2 years or 10 minutes? Should these ships appeal to everybody, or should they like going back to what I said earlier, should they specifically something meant to move on from?
um, I think like eventually people will move on from all of them, but I don't think that each one should be able to cater to every single style of it. I think, but because that's sort of the beauty of the game. You don't, you could be not interested in doing any, you know, FPS shooting. I know lots of people who aren't interested in doing any ground anything. Like, they want just to be able to get into a ship, like jump into the cockpit from outside, and live that, like, um, you know, uh, Luke Skywalker ship life, like,
Pilot life.
or jumping into like the Viper on Battlestar Galactica, and then all action stations and head out. Like, that's all they want to do. They got no interest in, like, not people that would ever even play like a first person shooter game. Like, I
Yeah.
know plenty of people like that, and so I mean that's really why I think when I see someone that's new that they get into the game and like someone sends them some money in game to go to the shop and buy something, like I've had that conversation with plenty of people of like, all right, well, what should I get? And usually they'll have something, like an Aurora or a C1 or something. And the first thing that's on their mind then is to try the complete opposite. which is to do that, like jump straight into the pilot seat of something. At that point, like, in game, I'll usually tell them to, all right, we'll get like, a Gladius. Get a Gladius because that's always being kept gold standard because it's connected to Squadron 41. It's immediately made. It's like it's a meta ship anyway. Like people will always be using a Gladius for that sort of stuff. And if you want to get into like dogfighting, then you need to rip that band-aid off and be able to learn how to keep your ship alive and to do damage by like learning how to move around your enemy and how knowing when to get out and how to like power manage the triangle and all that stuff. But then outside of that, I usually would recommend people to get like I mean the Corsair is still quite cheap. Like when someone's like stepping it up, if they're not interested in just like one-on-one fighting, I then say, all right, well, you might want a ship that can introduce playing with friends like on your ship. Like I see that as an entire gameplay loop in itself, is just playing with other people and being a crew member, like where you've got get here. You can't do that in a one-seater ship, like and even with the two-seater like fighters, that's still a completely different like gameplay loop. And so I think the Corsair in game is still like it's under 10 million. I think isn't like 6 or 7 million or something. It's actually ridiculous. It's ridiculous actually how cheap that is in game. So I always recommend people get like a Gladius and like a Corsair, or if they're not right there yet, like a Cuddy Black kind of thing.
But they're trying to, like long term in this game, they're trying to make all of these ships kind of intense to use, right? With the engineering systems, with the damage system, with even flight controls, control surfaces. They're trying to make it a little bit daunting to get behind the pilot seat and take ownership of a ship. I feel like they should be trying to make starter ships good enough that people don't feel like they need to move on within their first day or two of playing. Because if they're moving on to a ship like the Corsair in their very first day, and maybe they're a very intuitive player, they know what they're doing, they can catch on to things very quickly, but if anybody can just jump in and start flying a Corsair because they're bored with their Pisces or their Aurora, then maybe the game's a little too easy to progress in.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I feel like initially it's when you're starting out and you've got no in-game credits, even buying like a set of armor or a gun or something, that's tough. You don't really start with enough money to do that. And then what was it? Because I started out this patch cycle where they like reset the money and everything, and I was blown away by some of the pricing for stuff. I went and I did like 3 or 4 missions or something, and then I went, all right, I'm gonna go repair my ship, and the repair costs was more than I made from any of those missions. I was like, hold on, what the hell am I supposed to do? And then like I was looking at, then I went to do this, like, all right, I'll do some salvaging, and I took a salvage mission, and you pay like 20 grand or something to do it. And then I went and I salvaged the ship. I sold everything from it. I made less than I paid to buy into the thing. It's like, what the hell's going on? So it was terrible balancing. And then, look, they did say, CIG did say recently that they're going to do a payout balance pass soon, didn't they? They said they were going to go through and make sure the missions pay a certain amount, because it is, at the moment, it is broken. And it takes a while of doing those missions until you unlock contracts that really start paying a lot better. And during that time, if you die once or twice, you got to buy more guns and armor and stuff, which is like thousands of credits, and you just don't have that credits. It is difficult to start kind of getting your feet in there for a while. And I mean,
But that's right now. Long term, like when there are easier ways to make money. What I'm getting at is, I think CIG should make it so that small ships, maybe not exclusively starter ships, but a ship like a Nomad or a ship like a Hull A or a Sulan or a Reliant should have benefits over your Corsair or your Constellation, your Ironclad or your Raylan, because of certain abilities that these ships have that don't necessarily make them super special. They're still starter ships, they're still the basics, but like things like jump point sizes or signatures when you get scanned, or how likely NPC pirates are to attack you based on the ship size you're flying, how easy it is to fly in atmosphere because of the size. I feel like there should be things that make these ships valuable, not just because it helps with the progression and kind of like pacing players through their way up into ships, but it means that it makes the game a little bit less pay to win, in my opinion. If you can more easily transport something with a Nomad than you can with a Corsair because of the jump point size, then it gives that person who just got the Nomad a little bit more to benefit from.
Yeah. I think with the resource management stuff that's coming in, I think I've heard them say that this kind of is the thing that's happening. With all that coming in and engineering gameplay, I think that ships need to have a real look at the armor and like HP differences. I think that a bunch of ships, like from where we are, it's like HP goes from like 10,000 HP for the entire ship to like I think like 200,000 HP for a ship. I think it needs to go drastically higher. I think the larger ships need to have multiple times the amount of HP that they already have. But the damage that happens to their systems and the amount of engineering, they need to be made like inoperable, but still have plenty of health going on. Like they need to be made inoperable by those components, and then so an engineer has time to run around and a push to go like, all right, I need to learn how to put these circuits in or whatever and do all this stuff for then time to be boarded and then time for this, because I reckon there's so much gameplay we haven't even experienced yet through a lot of the design of these ships to make them optimal. Like being boarded is really just like people don't do it. They just blow up or not. You know, there needs to be you need to be able to shoot someone for long enough in these big ships that they get taken down, that then the person attacking then instinctively goes, all right, now we board. Now we need to. If we want to keep taking this out, it's going to take too long just firing on this behemoth, this reclaimer. It's going to take an hour firing on this reclaimer with our small ships to take this down. But we've managed to take down their shields and their power. That's going to take them like 10 minutes to get back up before they can kind of get out. But they're safe in there. So the player that's attacking needs to feel like, all right, that's a tin can that I need to crack in to get them juicy beans out of,
Absolutely.
But that's not what happens in anyone's mind, because we know, well, I'm just going to nuke this person out of orbit. And I think that difference is where that benefit should come from. Like being like the Nomad, say if you get the Nomad, it might have way more health, but it's only one ingress point. All that they need to do is make sure they take out your engine, whatever, and then just get in, knock you out, and there's only one kind of point that they need to defend and attack until you can get into it. But something like the Reclaimer, where you got multiple points that you can use as like choke points, you can have, you could be hiding over here waiting for this and then come out, or if you've sneakily stuck a Nursa rover in your cargo bay, there needs to be enough time to respawn in there, to run around, go to your quarters while they're out the front of the thing and they're starting to pilot it. Then you can sabotage it, then they come back and forth. Like that back and forth within someone's ship is very, very rare to ever happen. We have a framework for it, but where balancing lies and everything, it's just like non-existent. So I really do hope that with this resource network engineering stuff that's coming in, I pray to God that they're doing it at the exact same time. They're going to look at adding, I think they've kind of used an excuse that like, oh, armor, that's armor. Armor hasn't been developed yet. It's like, no, it's HP, man. That's all that is. Just
well,
we're putting Maelstrom off. Like, no, don't, just give us more reason to actually need to breach someone's ship, for Christ's sake. Like,
I do think that they started that with soft death and realized that, like you're saying, they don't want to wait completely until armor and stuff. But I do think it heavily depends on the armor system, because you wanna make it so that a large ship like the Reclaimer can't lose HP from a gun like a size 1 pea shooter on a Pisces, and make it so that players are bringing the actual right weapons to take that ship down faster than 2 or 3 hours. But
yeah, and the payoff, like even like if if small fighter ships, yeah, they could be made to blow up a whole lot easier, but it should be more that they're disabled by their components getting messed up far earlier, because all their components are on the outside of their ship, and at what point is someone gonna be wanting to repair those if they're just going to blow up anyway? No, you just go and repair it or just get a new one. That, like, there should, a part of the dogfighting PvP gameplay should be that like panic moment where you're like, oh, I've got to get out of this damn thing. Oh, like, open the cockpit, get out, like like working on it in the middle of like a massive dogfight happening around you. And then people be like, that idiot's out there repairing. I don't need to worry about him. I'm going to go over here. This is where the real fight's at. Like, the gameplay shouldn't end with your ship being blown up, which sounds crazy, but it shouldn't. And that's where there's so much of this whole like Star Citizen as a space, a sci-fi simulator, like has really yet to explore. And you're right, soft death was the sort of start of them doing it, but I think they pretty much they wouldn't have almost immediately have realized that like it wasn't the distance between something being soft death and actually blown up is minuscule. It's nothing. It's like you can often accidentally go straight past soft death and just vaporize something, because you just weren't even really sure. I reckon that jump between those 2 points is where we're going to start finding value in those like different ships, or seeing like different class armored ships being a big thing. Because when we come to stuff like the capital ships and that, honestly, I don't think like almost any of these starter ships should be able to take or like really damage them whatsoever. No. It should be a purely like, if you manage to board that thing, like, you should feel like a hero. It should feel like you taking down, you're in the trenches of the Death Star, like placing that final shot. Like.
But this is looking at it from a combat perspective. Like, if we want to talk about how we're keeping these small ships around in the long term, maybe you could look at these capital-sized ships, and instead of saying they're fighting each other, note that you don't want to get rid of your Pisces or your Origin 100i or your Avenger Titan, because that's what fits inside the capital ship. That's what lets you leave that ship in orbit and fly down onto Earth. Or not Earth, but like a planet. And it's those kinds of small benefits that I would like to see more from Star Citizen, to encourage the fact that these ships are not just for people who are starting the game, but they have their uses in different little niches like that.
Totally. I mean, I still fly around the Pisces, the Cutter. Like, I think when I talk about, I'm glazing on those ones a bit, but that's because they better represent personally me coming into a space game and living my space life kind of thing, like. And so I still keep those ones. I still use, in my mind, they're my snub, they're my future snub for whatever larger ship that I am getting. And I mean, that is why they do need to keep these even the Auroras and everything. You know what, I got a feeling we actually are going to see Aurora Mark IIs, because they're going to have to do such a drastic pass on these things to bring them up to a better level, that they're probably going to say it might as well be just a new ship, in my opinion. I've got a feeling that might be a thing, but I don't know who the Aurora fan is, to be honest.
I wouldn't say Aurora fan. It's like your first car, right? Like, you get it because you need it. You grow a relationship with it. You find it endearing. It does the things you need, but you're still looking to upgrade at some point. As long as the Aurora can just do those basics, like you said, cargo, a bed, some weapons, and the ability to get around. If you're not getting into combat and then the storage pods on the Aurora works, is it that bad of a ship?
No, I like, once again, it's me being purely a design snub and just not liking, because I feel like whenever I get into one of those things and start it up, I feel like the animations must be broken. and it's not like, you know, it's
Probably.
like being in a Scorpius and the wings not opening up or something. I feel like that's happening when I'm in it.
Mhm.
And then it's like, oh no, it's just doesn't have any
It definitely needs an
animations.
update. I agree with you. I
It
don't think it'll
feels like
be.
it feels like a box. It feels like you're getting into a
It
box, and
does,
then the
like a
box
sardine
has
can.
flight. Yeah.
I don't think they'll do a Mark II for it. I'm really hopeful. That's what I'm telling people. Like the Mark II for the Hornet makes sense because they planned that so long ago.
Mhm.
I would hope that they don't start just randomly throwing Mark IIs out on any other
Yeah,
ship, because the Hornet's the only one that's ever been denoted by a Mark I, as far as I'm aware.
That's the current gag that is in the comments of all my videos at the moment. Each time I'm like critical of a ship, someone's
gonna
in the
make a
comments
Mark II.
saying, "Oh, they're going to make a Mark II Carrack."
But there are no Mark I Carracks. Like that's
anything can be Mark I if you try hard enough.
I even posted a clip on Twitter yesterday from 2016 where I think it was gosh, who is it? No, not Paul Jones. I think it's another guy with Jones as the last name. But he was saying, he was like, so we made the Mark I Hornet for Squadron 42, and because that is so old and we wanted to have something else for Star Citizen, we made a different ship that is the Mark II that will show up in Squadron, but it's mainly as like an additional ship. And then the first one will become like a collector's item you can get in the game. Like they explained it all 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And they've never said that about any other ships.
I mean, look, you're totally right, because the thing is, if they did do enough stuff to an Aurora to say, oh, we might as well call it a Mark II, they'd still need to upkeep the original Aurora anyway. So they'd still need to do that work on it. But I wouldn't mind seeing them do a Mark II in the sense that they just replace it altogether.
What do you do for the people who got the original?
No, they get that. They get the upgrade of it. But
what if you like the old one?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying completely like make it a different ship. I just reckon it has that old design language that they've done. It's not, look, that's an RSI ship. Are you like looking at that thing? That doesn't look like what RSI looks like anymore. It looks like the old hangar tech demo, in my opinion.
I don't know, man. I think that there's some good continuity between the Aurora, the Connie, and the Bengal. Like, I think they did a decent job of stretching that design language across different sizes.
The Connie is also notoriously old. Been needing a gold pass for the longest time. The Connie is beautiful, but that is when they start having more of an RSI design language. I know. I just like to see maybe the wings just have a little more animations and shit. Clean up some lines and everything. That's all I'm really talking about. Making it feel a little bit more spaceship wise.
I'll say this, both the Mustang and the 300 series got huge reworks, I think around 2017, 2018, because they also were in that same sort of time frame as the Aurora. So I do think that the Aurora, when it gets its gold pass or whatever, we could see it get updated a little bit. Like, do you know what the old 300 series looks like?
The old one? No.
It's very old looking, I'll say. It's not that much different from the ship we have now, but you can tell that it was like the old model. And they didn't Mark II it. I think a lot of people wanted them to keep the old model in the game. But I could see them updating those older ships in the same way. The Reliant even might see something like that too. We'll have to see though.
300i is pretty solid. That's when the Origin ships get a lot more interesting, I think, at that point.
Yeah. Let's talk about the ships so we've actually been talking about the ships we have, but are there any holes in, let's say, the sub $70, $80 range for these ships that you think they could fill with another small ship, or just something that you want to see maybe a new manufacturer get into the game?
See, I personally, I'm a bit of I don't believe they should. This is something that CIG do notoriously, is they'll say, you know what, we realized that, around these types of ships that Crusader didn't have one in the medium type market. And so, canonically, they wanted to put one out, and that's why we're releasing this ship. I don't believe they should release ships just because certain manufacturers don't have entries in that level of something. I feel like that's them kind of just giving themselves a reason to do something more to make immediate money rather than work on older legacy ships that people have already paid for. That's that because that annoys me a little bit when they do that. When they say that that's the reason why they're releasing this because this manufacturer doesn't have one in that field. I don't like that. I prefer them to say that oh, we're releasing a medium-sized salvager because there is no medium-sized salvager. Like I'd rather see them put
like they did with the ironclad.
fill the gaps. Yeah, exactly. Fill the gaps of where there isn't gameplay or functionality yet. First and foremost, then they can go looking for coming up with things for a reason. It's like, oh, this manufacturer doesn't have a motorcycles. Like, okay, I don't care. Don't focus on the project. Focus on the task at hand.
Okay. So you don't think there should be any other starter ships then?
I mean, there can, but I don't currently see any I don't have any qualms with there being anything missing or anything. I don't think. No, not really. I mean, yeah, it all kind of gets into the only in like the medium to large category. I feel is where we start missing stuff.
Where does medium switch over for you?
For me, that's like the Cutlass Black. Like,
okay, yeah,
around the Cutlass Black thing, I think is where the Cutlass Black, and then yeah, that's just like a small medium where a Connie is like a large medium.
Yeah, I think I feel
or small large is a Connie at that point. It's funny. I did like a ship, like the best ships for this kind of patch video earlier, and I was referring to them as like starter, like or small, then medium, large, and heavy. And I realized like CIG has their own classification of sizes of ships. I shouldn't be doing my own. But I was looking at those ones. I don't agree with those with those ones. Like, no, I'm saying it this way.
Yeah, I mean it comes down to preference. Like when we talked about starter ships, it's what do you want? What makes you feel a certain way? Because there are plenty of ships that are capable of doing all the same things here.
Yeah, totally. I think yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like that at some point it feels more like they're going through a quota than it does actively filling in the blanks of gameplay sometimes. Like all right, we've got to bring a ground vehicle. We've got to bring a hover vehicle. All right, we've got to bring this. Like
the ground vehicles and hover vehicles, yeah, it's too much.
Yeah, I mean, everyone just calls them LTI tokens, which is just what they are at this point. I mean, sure. I mean, I imagine they're probably cutting a few people's teeth, new design people, on getting them up to scratch by doing a lot of those. I know the Sulin was that. And so, I mean, it makes sense when they've got that many people. Like, you can't just. I've worked with like hiring 3D artists and stuff before for video games, and you can't just hire a 3D artist and then say, okay, do our game's style, like really specific, like blocky pixel MMO from the 1990s style, and make it work. Because like it's just like you can't just ask an artist that does like portraitures to do a landscape, Yeah. It's not going to work. They've got to learn by cutting their teeth on stuff. And often with these types of ships, when they are training them to do stuff, they've got someone else with them. They've got like a higher, like a seasoned staff member who is taking their time out of doing something else to guide them through those ships to make sure they are meeting those design languages and to tutor them. So, I mean, it is an important thing to do like that, but we can only hope that the more that they do work on training and getting people up to scratch like that, the less that we'll have to they'll less they'll have to do it once they've got more people actively trained on it, you'd hope.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of training that needs to go on with this stuff. They talk about it enough. How about professional starters? How do you feel about the ships that you can get to get into like the specific gameplay, salvaging, mining? I guess that's really it. Cargo
I guess
in a way.
Yeah. I mean, that is kind of like, in my mind, okay, the one thing, I'll start by prefacing by saying this. At the moment, the one thing that puts me off Star Citizen a little bit is just the fact that I have a whole bunch of ships, and that, with only really like money making being the main sort of thing that you can do in it, not having something to work towards hurts my drive to want to play a whole bunch, because it's really enjoyable starting with nothing and like going, you know what? Oh man, I saw someone on this video using Eclipse, and they did this thing where they came in close and they couldn't be seen. And then they fired this torpedo from there and they like masked their signature and they just wiped all these guys out and they got all this stuff. Like, man, I want to be able to do that. That'd be awesome. And then like, all right, I need to grind this, go over this, get my reputation up. Oh, I really want to get my reputation up here. But when you've got a bunch of the ships eventually, like I'm the one of the rare people that miss the ship wipes. Once you've got like those ships, you don't have a reason to want to grind to get to and they can add more missions and levels of the reputation and stuff. But if you've got no drive to get up into those where those other experiences happen, like I won't do them.
Oh,
And so those to finish the point is that that's why I like things that the Vulture and that are at that other level. Like, they're at a price point really kind of above anything you can access very easily early on, because they're great goals for people to reach, I reckon. Because then, God, salvaging, oh God, people making all this money. Oh, RMC costs so much trading it. Imagine if I could just go out and get it. And there's a whole gameplay loop and how to what's the best way to salvage ships to make money. Like there's always a meta going on with salvaging and that, and people working up towards it. And then once they get like, oh, this reward, I finally got this ship, then being able to get deep in that and be like, all right, now I can really take it to the next level. Like, using this one, I can make way more money. Like, oh, what else is there? What would be my next goal? Like that whole path and experience, and that kind of like that feeling of building your empire through whatever means, but that you can to make money. Like, maybe I will be tempted by a life of crime just so I can, get out of this slum and and make enough money to get a ship that I can, a fancy ship that I can call home. And then I'll, when I rock up into, with my other friends and stuff, I'll get them to come and jump in my ship. Like, we feel like badasses in it or something. Like, really wanting to take ownership of making a ship feel more like home. And that's why people buy ships in this game, because they love that feeling of like they really connect, like having like your first Pokemon that you catch when you're playing when you're young, and you really train it up and it becomes your slugger that takes down the gym lead as well. And it might just be like a Rattata, but by the end, you've named him and you've got a close connection. And then as an adult, oh, I got a Rattata tattoo. Oh, he's badass. Oh, I love him. Blah, blah, blah. You connect with stuff like that. And that part of the journey for players, I think, going from their starter ship and then, finding what else they want to explore in it and picking their own destiny and having things to work towards is a really important part of it. And that's why, as I was saying, that no, I don't really think they do need different options for starters. I don't think there's anything really missing, because you don't want to give them everything when they first start. That's the whole point of playing. And then honestly, that's the joy that I don't have as much now, just because there's a whole, they're not doing ship wipes, to be honest.
Yeah, I think starters could fit a really nice role that the Cutlass or the Spirit C1 take, where they're like good ships at doing sort of basic stuff, but they don't offer that more specialized gameplay like a Freelancer Max or an Eclipse, like you said, or a Prospector or a Vulture.
Yeah, like they'd make you more equipped in general to take things on. Yeah,
good ships that you can still keep living using in it more if you want a small ship.
Yeah, you can still load other ships into them, and that you can get complicated with your that's why, to go back to the Carrack, that's why I loved the Carrack. Carrack was my Rattata beloved Pokemon kind of ship, because I got the Carrack. It was like, I have it in my actual hangar. I paid a lot of money for it, but I got that when I started doing content creation. And for me, it was like an investment for making content, because it was my home away from home. I could like load it up with a bunch of different vehicles to go and like equipment to go do a test for something, for an idea, for a video I had, set it all up, go out, hit the road, get it to, a big crater to, kill myself and pile my dead bodies in to see if I could test Pez to fill it up with dead bodies. You couldn't. They started deleting themselves. Pez is a lie. But that was like those sorts of things. Like that's how I connected with it. Each time I went, and then I went on missions that, it was totally overkill to do. And I should never be solo piloting that thing anyway. But I was doing it regardless because it provided me all this different capacity and functions to do. And I felt, I like Star Trek, and it gave me that Star Trek kind of like, get to the bridge, get to medbay. And the promise of that kind of future experience with it was, really well at the time represented what I wanted from Star Citizen in a project in the long run.
And the Carrack is certainly something to strive for. That's the kind of thing that you're sitting in your starter ship saying, I want that in a year.
Hell
I want
yeah,
to work towards that.
And you can park your starter ship in that thing, and you like bring it with you. It becomes, a tool. It becomes a part of the Carrack. It becomes a utility of the Carrack.
They have a lot of work to do on pacing people progressing through ships and like defining proper ship upgrade lines and all that stuff. Because right now, a lot of people see it as they're just going to do a ship wipe. Why am I working towards some ship? It's going to take so long. Everybody else already has one. I should just buy one with cash. Like, I hope that in the next year or two, especially with mission improvements and stuff, we start to see more incentive for people to focus on progressing through ships in the game rather than going to ship sales.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I mean, like, and a lot of people have that as well, like the majority of players aren't, spending a ship ton of money in here.
That's true.
So it's a privileged problem to have. I mean, especially as content creators, like, we get sent testers of ships and stuff that are added to our account for, a couple weeks, and then they delete them off, or they'll send you just like giveaway ones to give away. And it does fill up the hangar a bit and sort of dilutes their specialness.
Oh yeah.
So, and so it's it's a super privileged problem to have, but it does give us a sample of this being a problem later down the road for players, and how important it is to keep that whole element balanced.
I mean, like you said, we get ships gifted to us and stuff. I rarely ever fly them because I'm not really interested. Like, I want to work towards a cool ship for a reason. And I rarely feel the drive, or if I do feel the drive, I rarely feel like I have the means of completing it in a congruent way that I enjoy. I don't want to run mercenary missions over and over again for 3 weeks. I want to be able to go out and find some good information and maybe run a mission while I'm finding that information, then turn that information in and get good money, and then decide, hey, I'm good at this. I want to go and earn myself a star runner. I don't want to buy it. I don't want to have it in the shop or as a referral code. I want to literally work towards it, and the game's still kind of missing that.
Yeah, I've literally emailed CIG and asked them not to send me like testing ships, because it clutters my hangar. And because I'll be sitting there, say if I do own a Cutlass Black, and they'll go, oh, it's Jump Town, so we've sent a loaner Cutlass Black to your hangar, and then now it says Cutlass Black 1, Cutlass Black 2. I'm like, well, which one's my Cutlass Black?
Yeah, I got like 3 Auroras.
I want my Cutlass Black. I don't know which one it is. I want to make sure that I put all the components, and I put the nice pirate skin on the Cutlass Black that's mine. I don't want to, because if they take that away, well, it's probably just going to refund or dump all the components again in there. But I like the feeling of ownership. I in my mind, I kind of feel like the Star Citizen, you don't buy the game, you buy your ship that you want to experience the game in. That's how I ultimately view it. Like, I reckon they should delete the game packages in general. I reckon you should just be able to buy any ship you want, and it comes with a game pack. So if you want to jump in with a fucking mule, go for it, dude. Jump in, mule it up, or an X1. Get it in an X1 or a Pulse. or STV or a buggy, if you want to spend $16.50 to get into Star Citizen, I think you should have the option. And then, because that's really going to change their play style as they go. And then, hey, if you start earning good money in that, and hell, dude, you earned it, you know?
Maybe.
And you know what? It's probably really, you know what? It would be, if you had people getting in these utility vehicles, maybe that the way they really start playing is by just being a crew member. Maybe it's because they can get in and play and they have to go work for other people who have bigger ships.
Well, see, now that's
Maybe
a phone problem. We can't even, it's so hard to do that.
Yeah. Well, there you go. But that's a problem for them to solve as well. You know, and I reckon marketing wise, I reckon that would actually make them so much more money, to be quite honest as well. Because say if you told someone like, yeah, you can get in with a PTV buggy for $16.50, and they go, oh, all right, fine, 60. Oh, I'm ripping them off. I'm going to do that with a Pulse or whatever. If they actually do really enjoy the game, and they go, oh man, I'm really frustrated and drive around just in this buggy, but I really enjoy this game. All right, I'm going to CC you up. I'm going to take it up to the one that then they've had a bit of a taste, they've had a bit of experience. I'm going to take it up to, you know, the Mustang Alpha. That seems like my thing. I'm going to turn it into that. And they get that extra $15. And then they go, oh, well, it's only another $10 then to get up to the Aurora. All right, I'll just put that in. And then make that money like incrementally without people thinking that they have to get in with a large, you know, initial thing. And that's also a part of the beauty that I think of Star Citizen, is because I've told this people before, you don't buy the game, you buy the ship that you want to experience the game with. And that's how I see purchasing ships in the game. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it would be cool if we were able to get game packages where people could just load in and figure out how to become a crew member, but we need a lot more in-game before that becomes realistic.
I mean, I can see like something like that happening though, you know, like if they did make you know how with like Arena Commander, you know, it's got matchmaking. Like, why couldn't there be like a temp work agency thing where say I'm going to my ASOP terminal, right? And I want to take out the Reclaimer, but I want a crew. On that ASOP terminal or something next to it, you should be able to say, all right, I'm looking for like to actually plug in the buttons, like, you know, 4 crew members and, you know, pay at this rate. And it like deducts that amount of money from me to them as it goes along automatically. So it's not left up to me to, all right, well, it's time to pay up, the game crashed and it's all gone away. And then other people should be able to go to like a work board or whatever and be like, all right, I want to, you know, oh, here's a job popping up here with Dedleader on his Reclaimer to do this. Oh, that's good money. All right, I'll click that. And then just have some way to like make it either automated or, you know, quick. Maybe that could be like the purpose of cities, you know? Like the reason you really want to go to a planet side is because if you're looking for work, then you're already in the city. Then the person with the ship is already in the city. It's all like the work board and everything is in the hangar bay. So the people looking for work should be there ready to go. And then have them automatically be able to just go, all right, cool, hangar 4, I'm going to crew. I've already been designated to having like, you know, engineering access only, you know?
Yeah. Overall,
like what's stopping them?
The starter situation with Star Citizen is going to be pretty complex. And I'm interested in seeing how they work with the ships that are made for those kinds of players and how they can progress through the game. Thank you, Dad, so much for joining me for this talk. Appreciate you. You've got a lot of good stuff to say about ships.
I got too much to say about ships.
Never. That's never even. That can never be the case. You make your own videos about ships, though. Can you let folks know where they can find those? I
do on YouTube. It's just Dedleader, spelled DED, and yeah, I do a lot of like best daily driver kind of ships and a lot of shenanigan ones and a lot of just weird bits and pieces. I speak my mind a lot. A lot of people say I'm obnoxious, you know. So if you like obnoxious analysis of Star Citizen without being, you know, without hate, maybe check it out.
Could always use a little bit of hate, just spice things up, just a tad.
A little spice is fine, you know.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this one. Always a good time, and I hope viewers, you guys, or listeners, I guess you got a lot of good information about these starter ships in the game. Starter ship is a weird term. and it's definitely going to be changing over time. But I do think that all these ships that are starter ships should be small ships, right? And we should be viewing them more as ships you can use for the entirety of your Star Citizen career, rather than just as something that you're entering the game with. That's at least that's my hope.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you again for watching or viewing. If you're on YouTube and you don't like ads, we do ad-free podcast audio platforms. If you are a supporter and you didn't know, you can actually come watch this live. You can hear our gossip and our drama before and after the show. We do a little bit of a chat here with the with supporters in chat, and it's a good time. I enjoy this community, the Garden on Discord, great people, and they're always here to keep us entertained while we're chatting. But again, Dedleader, thank you so much for getting in here and giving some of your knowledge on ships. I hope everybody got to learn or at least get entertained by something today. And I'll see you all next week.